Welcome to Fearless Females, where ambition meets resilience. Meet your guide, Lorie Jones, president of Fidelis Wealth Advisors. Join her and remarkable women executives as they uncover the triumphs and transformative moments shaping extraordinary careers. Ready to be fearless? Let the journey begin.
Thanks so much for joining us today. We'd like to give a shout out to our sponsor, Fidelis Wealth Advisors. Thank you so much for sponsoring this podcast. So today I'm speaking with Wassan Kasey. And the thing that I loved most about her, and I think you guys will too, is how truly authentic she is. She started in a profession of financial services that is very buttoned up, suits, serious, black and white, don't get too colorful, don't get too exciting. And she is authentic and warm and friendly and enthusiastic. And she just helps everyone around her feel a little bit better about what they're doing and where they're coming from. And I think she has a lot of creative ideas. I was super excited to hear about her journey, and wait until you hear how she got her job in college by knocking on doors with resumes, which is bold and wonderful. So let's get to it. Well, thanks so much for joining us this morning. We're here with Wassan Kasey. She is the advisor, practice management consultant at Capital Group. And I'm so excited to talk to you today. Thank you so much for agreeing to be on, Wassan. We appreciate it.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me, Lorie. I'm excited to be here.
So we start usually with a question about a book because I'm a reader and I just devour the things. So I have a stack on my bedside table that's larger than this year is going to be able to read, but I'm still looking for more. What is your favorite book?
Okay, my all-time favorite, I just have to be honest, is Pride and Prejudice. I'm a sucker for anything Jane Austen. And I don't know, I think Pride and Prejudice for me was probably the first classic novel that I read where I was just so enthralled, and I read it on my own volition. It wasn't something that was assigned at school or anything. So I just recently bought a really beautiful copy of it for my 11-year-old niece. And so she's a real avid reader. So I was like, okay, start to do this. But, you know, I want to be adult about this too. So one of the other books, I just started reading it again. And so far it's going really well, but it's called Essentialism. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a great read about how do you align to the tasks that you're most needed for, the ones that you are the appropriate person and where you're going to have the highest impact. And for me, that's really hard because I'm such a pleaser. So I'm always like saying yes to a bunch of things and doing a lot of things that are in addition to my purview. So this is really kind of helping me hone that skill. So I really like it so far.
Does it teach you how to say no to the things that okay, well, I'm definitely buying that. I'll put it on the top of my stack to read because I have that same problem where I just say yes to so many things that sometimes it gets a little overwhelming.
Exactly. Yes. Our careers are similar, but a little bit different, you and I. So for me, from a corporate construct, there's so many different directions that I can get pulled with it, whether it's different projects or internally aligned initiatives, and then of course, external things with our clients, et cetera. So really starting to focus where my skill set, where my time and where my impact can make a big difference is where I should be saying yes. It just goes against my grain, honestly, because I want to help everybody. I want to be involved in everything for positive impact, but it's a good read. They even give you a Venn diagram, which I'm a sucker for. So I think it's good.
Yeah, you're speaking my language there for sure. So that leads us into our next question, which is a really good segue, is just tell me a little bit about yourself. How did you get where you are today? Kind of what do you do? Just tell us a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. My journey started, I would say 20 years ago, but I think it started a little bit prior to that when I was 19. So what's that, 23 years ago? So 23 years ago, I was a sophomore, about to turn a sophomore in college. So I was about to become a sophomore in college. It was the summer before sophomore year. I was a finance major at the University of Southern California, and I wanted to become a server at the local islands. And there's a restaurant here. I don't know if it was national or not, but at the time there was a restaurant here called Islands, and it was a hot spot. Families would go, and every time I went, I thought, oh my gosh, I could be a great server and I could make a lot of money on tips because I'm very outgoing. I love people. I love serving. Like, it's really great. So I was about to put in my application, and my mother and father sat me down and they said, hey, look, you are finance major, so you got to get a job within finance. And I said, what? I was so dismayed. But it was probably the best thing that they ever did for me. So my father sat with me and he said, this is what you're going to do. This is the best thing that you can do. Print out copies of your resume and go door knocking to all the finance firms that are in our city. And at the time, the city that I was growing up in, which is Glendale, California, there was a Morgan Stanley, a Smith Barney at the time. There was an IHOP headquarters, Nestle headquarters. So there was a lot of firms there that were represented. So I said, okay. So it was a hot summer day. I remember to this day what I was wearing. It was a light blue sweater with khaki dress pants. I had a bob haircut and a stack of my resume in my hand. And I went from one office to the other, and I told them exactly what I wanted to do, which was, hey, do you have an HR person or head of operations that I can submit my resume to? I'd love to get an intern job here for the summer. And Morgan Stanley came back to me later that day. They called me pretty much instantly, and they said, we want to hire you. So it was awesome. Yeah, it was great. And the reason that they hired me was obviously I had taken initiative, unlike other candidates that they had seen. And there was one specific advisor who saw me. He saw me walk in through the lobby, saw me ask for the ops manager, saw me talk to the ops manager and hand my resume and walk out. And immediately after that, he went to her and said, what was that kid doing? And they told him, and he happened to be an alumni of USC. And he said, hire her. I want her. And so he took me under his wing, and it was incredible. I mean, it wasn't like, go get me coffee and things like that. It was, let's sit down and talk about options trading.
Oh, wow.
Let me teach you about the economy, the markets, everything that at that time was at the grain of being a financial advisor. And I did a lot of cold calling, a lot of cold calling. And I was successful at getting strangers to come into the office to meet with this advisor. And I interned there for 3 years. So throughout the remainder of my college education, I interned at Morgan Stanley. And I had the luck of sitting right outside the branch manager's office. And so he hired me to be a financial advisor at the age of 21.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I know. It was a wild time because, it was 20 years ago. And so there was nothing other than get your licenses and start bringing in clients. And that's what I did. And I did that for a couple of years. And then I thought, I really want to make a shift so that clients truly see me as an advocate for them. Obviously, I was so young. It was incredibly difficult to build a business on my own. And so I made a shift and I became a portfolio manager and a research analyst at Wells Fargo. And it was fantastic. I had a discretionary book of business that I managed, and it was awesome. But the thrill of the hunt didn't escape me. I was a financial advisor at heart. So I was bringing in assets, and then Wells Fargo asked, hey, would you help us show other advisors how to bring in fiduciary investment assets? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So I was lucky enough for them to create a role for me. And from there, I worked hand in hand with other advisors and bankers and trusted fiduciary specialists to help them bring in new assets and new clients. And so I really focused on sort of the ensemble practice at that point, guiding my partners. And then I got an opportunity in 2013 to lead institutional and retail sales in the Western US for a hedging strategy. And so it was a privately held firm. And so I took it. I took the opportunity, and it was a fantastic opportunity. You know, I got to flex a lot of different muscles that I had cultivated up until that point. And I did that for 4 years before joining Capital Group as an advisor practice management consultant. And so I've been here for the last 7 years of my career.
Yeah, well, that's what I noticed. Like, there's a couple of times it feels like in your career that maybe you made up your own job title. Like they created a position just for you.
Yeah, I've been very lucky. Yes, it's been a good 20 years. Yeah, I'm not sure why it went that way. I think, I had sort of this blind courage at the time. The first time that they created the role for me, I went to them and I said, hey, look, I have this skill set and clearly you value it, but I'm being asked to do a variety of things that don't all funnel into the area that you want me to specifically focus in on, which is generating new client relationships with advisors and other people that work with clients. So I said, well, why don't you create a role properly? And that way I can focus my time on the things that I'm helping you best with. And these other tasks can be given to somebody who's more qualified for these other tasks. And luckily they said that was a good idea. So they moved forward with it. And I was a benefactor of really great leaders and management at that time. So it helped.
And it sounds though like you also put some, like you had the courage to stand up and say, hey, I'm being asked to do a lot of things. There's some things I do really great at, and we should take advantage of those specifically.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, I don't know what allowed me to do that. I think if I really think about it, it was the path leading up to it that I had taken. My dad had given me a lot to hang my hat on early on. My mother too, but my dad just gave me very specific advice, like very tactical. And then when I left Morgan Stanley, it was of my own volition. I just thought, this just isn't for me. And I actually didn't have a job lined up when I left. I just knew that it was just not the role that was right for me at the time. And so again, I got lucky, but I think because I survived those two transitions, that it allowed me to maybe have a stronger voice. And I was young when I did that. When I went to them and said, hey, I want a specific role. I was young. I was 26. So,
Yeah.
I don't know what gave me that courage, but it did.
What did your dad do?
My father was a civil engineer, and he was the deputy director of public works for a large county here in California, in Southern California. So I think it's the largest county in all of the US, but I'm not sure. So I won't say that it is.
So if you look back, what is the best investment you feel like you've made in yourself? Is there something that you can point to that was like, oh, I'm so glad I did that. That really led to a lot of success for me?
That's a great question. Honestly, I think my initial answer is probably coaching. Every time that I had a pivotal moment in my career, I hired a coach. It was always like I started sensing, okay, there's this rubbing edge and I'm on the precipice of transition, but I can either go about it by myself and flub my way through it and sort of figure it out. It'll probably take me a lot longer because I don't have muscle memory around it. Or I can hire somebody that has done this and knows how to get me to think a little bit differently about my career and what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I've done that 3 times. So I've had 3 coaches. And now that you got me thinking about it, I've had 3 coaches, and I've also done a couple of different personality assessments, like the disc analysis, things like that have really helped me figure out communication style, not just of myself, but the way that I should ideally communicate with a variety of people so that I meet them where they're at, rather than having to force them to meet me where I'm at, So those are probably the things that have helped me.
It sounds like your dad might have been your first coach. You just didn't have to hire him.
I love that. Yeah, he came for free. Yeah.
So where did you find your coach? Did you just start looking in the yellow book? People probably don't even know what the yellow book is nowadays, but
right. Yeah, that's a great question. The irony of it is now I coach. And like you're saying, like, how would people even find me? I'm lucky to find the people that I coach because I work with a large corporation that offers this as part of our service to the folks that we work with. The way that I found my coaches, the first one was I needed to really hone my public speaking skills. I was always a good public speaker. It was something that I really cultivated early on. In college, I made it a priority. I was like, I'll tell you that if we have time for it. But it was a priority of mine. And then, of course, you joined Toastmasters and all that early on in your career. But when it came time that it was an integral part of the way that I was going to move forward in my career, I had met a speech coach through a colleague of mine. And she was based in Georgia and I'm in Los Angeles. And so we started doing the virtual thing before, this was like 12 years ago, before it was a thing.
Uh-huh.
And she helped me really think differently about the way I communicate, the way that I structure my presentations, the way that I create almost like imagination around the concepts that I'm sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how I found the first one. My second one was a flat out ask. I asked for her. I had anticipated that I needed some media training. And so I just asked my manager. I said, look, I need some media training. I would like to get that. And my manager thankfully said yes. So it was a corporate sponsored coaching that they had access to. And my third one, again, was through a colleague, just word of mouth, and got access to a person that worked with people like myself who were looking to just sort of move forward in their career. And so it was always kind of word of mouth.
So ask your network.
Yeah, exactly.
So what is the worst advice someone ever gave you? And did you take it? Did you learn from it? Tell me about that.
Okay, this one's really hard. I'll start by saying I didn't take the advice, but it definitely opened my eyes. It's a very sort of personal story, but it's, I think, really important, especially as, with your audience where you're thinking about women who are thinking about their future and their career, et cetera. So I'll start by saying when I first started my career, I was very much, dressed in business suits, head to toe, mostly pantsuits, right? You probably feel the same way I do, right? When you first start off, you have to sort of wear a certain uniform.
Yeah.
And I wore it. And after about a year, I just started thinking, I was like, I'm a woman, I love women. I love being a woman. And there is so much variety in the fashion that we can lean into and colors. And I just wanted to be the red in the I wanted to be the red in the sea of sameness, which was blues and grays, right? I just wanted to be a pop of red. And so I was, I would wear red, I'd wear fuchsia, I'd wear dresses, I'd wear, pants. I would at that time take a sash and I'd use that as my belt with a little brooch on it. I just really loved wearing fashionable clothing. And so I stuck with that. And somewhere along my career, there was this older person who, after I had given a presentation, came up to me. And this person at first was pretty complimentary. She said, "Hey, great presentation. Obviously, you've got a big path forward here." And then she followed it up with, she said, "Just remember what it is that we're selling." And she was insinuating that because I dressed like a woman, that it would be distracting to the people that were in the audience. And I just remember thinking, wow, I was so taken aback. I was young. I think I was 26 at the time. And, now looking back at 26, this is almost 20 years ago. I think, man, that is such a hard thing for a 26-year-old to have to think about and grapple with and navigate.
Yeah.
And it could have gone either way for me. I could have taken her advice and really felt bad about myself, or really questioned who I was working with and questioned the industry. But I decided to ignore it. And I decided to be myself authentically. And I decided to work pretty comprehensively and cohesively with everybody. And it worked well. And that sort of, I think, was a really big moment for me, where I thought, you know what, I'm not going to let this get in my way. I'm actually going to lean in here and show people that you can have duality. You can be a woman who loves fashion and who has a bubbly, upbeat personality, and then also be unbelievable at your job and a go-getter, and somebody who really kind of dives deep and takes names and doesn't ask for apologies, right? Or ask for apologies, not ask for permission. I really kind of leaned into that. And I've always prided myself on trying to be the best at what I do. And that never went away. So that was probably the worst advice I got.
I find that really interesting, because I have noticed that changing just in the last little while, that you were way above the curve, 20 years ago, because you still feel like you have to dress in those black and blue business suits, and you have the certain level of heel and the certain shirt that you wear with it. And it is dang boring, isn't it?
Yes. You know what I've noticed too, and I love this, and I wish that I was this way. And I honestly wish I was this young, but I've noticed that younger women now, when they're at conferences, they wear sneakers, flat sneakers that they look awesome. They're wearing a dress and then they're wearing sneakers with them. And I think, oh my gosh, that is the smartest, most practical, most cool thing I've seen, because I still can't get past the need to wear heels. That's still ingrained in me. But man, hats off to everybody else.
I know.
I wish I could pull that off, because I totally would.
I know. Yeah. And I do like the authenticness of bringing, if pink used to be a taboo color as well, you can't wear pink because, black, blue, white, that sort of thing, but don't draw attention to the fact that you're a woman in finance. And I understand where you're coming from. I love that you chose to be authentic. I think that speaks volumes.
Thank you. Thanks. That's so nice.
So if you have to look back on your career so far, do you have something that you wish that you would have done differently? Maybe a regret about the way that you did something, and now knowing what you know now, hey, if I could go back, I would change the way I handled that situation.
Yeah, that's it. That's another really good, very thoughtful question. I'm going to have a harder time answering this one. The major decisions that I've made, I have no regrets over. I think I haven't had a linear path, which actually excites me. And so I really like that. I've loved every company that I've worked with. Every person that I've worked with has been really great. I think if I were to have a regret, and this is going to sound so maybe formulaic, but I think it's not believing in myself all the way through and sometimes letting that imposter syndrome take over. I don't know if you feel similarly. Yeah.
Every woman, in fact, probably everyone does have that at times. Or
Yeah. Yeah. That imposter syndrome can get pretty loud sometimes. And sometimes I've let it take over when maybe it shouldn't. And other times it's present and I've plowed through whatever task was at hand and came out of it the other end thinking, okay, good. I'm so glad that I didn't listen to this inner voice that, could have held me back. And I think every time that I've let that inner imposter syndrome take hold and I didn't plow through was probably a regretful moment. Again, in the end, I've had great mentors, I've had great leaders, I've had great opportunities. So in the end, it all worked out. But sometimes I do wonder, man, I was just a little bit stronger at that point, or if I was just a little bit more poignant with a certain part of my decision making, would it have made a meaningful change? And I think it probably would have. I really do.
Just telling you, hey, you aren't good enough for this, or you're not smart enough here. Is that the kind of imposter syndrome you're talking about?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, and even like let's say this one I think is the biggest culprit. So let's say there is a job opening, right? And you think, oh, I can do that. I can do this job. And then you start reading the specifics and you start reading through them. And it's like, oh, they need 10 years prior experience or 5 years prior experience. And you start reading further and it's like they work with specific type of person or they have specific types of projects. They bring in specific types of revenue or whatever it is. You start to, as you read the specifics, talk yourself out of it and say, oh gosh, they probably, I guess they want somebody with 10 years experience or 5 years experience, or they want somebody who knows how to speak to these people or maybe has a network of these people, et cetera. And so you talk yourself out of applying, or you talk yourself out of pursuing it completely. And what you don't realize in those moments is that might be what they initially wanted because they had to put pen to paper on something. But what they need might be something completely different. It might be your type of personality or your type of drive or your type of connections or creativity or the way that you see things, the way that you perceive things and activate on them and think through them. And so I think in those instances, it can really hold people back. And I know that it's held me back sometimes. So
maybe that's the cue to go pick up your resumes and go start door knocking, right? Like,
right. Right.
Out of the box, a little bit of you got to sell yourself because tell them this is what you want. You really do want this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny when you say that. At 19, I probably was a lot more fearless than I was at whenever 30, 40. You know what I mean? I don't know. I don't know if it's because you feel like you have more to lose when you're older. I genuinely have no idea. But yeah. What you just said. Yeah.
Borrow a little bit from our 20-year-old self and sell them.
Right. Exactly.
So if you could go back and talk to your 19 or 20-year-old self, having the experiences and the journey that you've had so far, is there anything that you would tell her?
Patience, I think. Patience in all aspects of life, by the way. Like, again, this is personal, but you grow up, you think, oh, I've got to get married when I'm 25. And then as you get closer to 25, you're like, I got to get married by the time I'm 28. You just start pushing that time frame. I just, so didn't get married until I was almost 36. So, and then of course, my husband and I'm so lucky to have the person that I have by my side. And you've now met my son, who's 4, and he is a firecracker and he's the best. And I'm so lucky that he's my kid. And it all came about with patience, on my personal life, like just sort of moving forward, making sure that I'm making the right decisions, picking the right people, all of that. And then, of course, professionally, same thing, patience. Sometimes it's really hard, especially when you first start off. You know you're capable of a lot. You know that you have a varied skill set. You know that you have creativity and different things, and you're a gunner. I think when you're young, you're a gunner, and you've got this fire that needs to be fed. And there are ways to feed that fire and keep it going. But keeping your eye on the ball and staying patient, I think is really, really important. Don't make snap decisions just because, make thorough decisions. Talk to your mentor, talk to your lawyers, all of that. People you trust.
And that's something that actually comes up kind of over and over as you start looking at career trajectories. A lot of times they think, when you first start, you think, okay, I'm hired. Now I should be like COO, right? Like, right. How many steps is it from now until they're like, that's happening soon, right? And it's a process. It's a process of learning and growing and becoming until you do get to the higher level rungs. And sometimes if it doesn't happen right away, you got to give it a little bit of patience, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you own your practice and you run such a great business. And I'm, of course, had the advantage of seeing that. And I love what you do. I genuinely love it. And you don't come to the point that you're at without a bit of patience and taking opportunities as they come. And the fact that you're even hosting something like this, I think is a testament to all that. So yeah, I feel like, you could probably teach me about patience.
I don't know about that. It's that fear. I chose the name Fearless Female because for me, the word fearless means being scared and doing it anyway.
Love
and
that.
That's a lot of what I do in my life. I'm a little bit scared, but we're going to try it anyway.
I love it. And and you never know where things take you, right? I mean, that also kind of comes to your question about what else would I tell my 20-year-old self? Aside from patience, I think just really leaning into life, making sure that you're experiencing things in all their totality and making sure that you're prioritizing the right things along the way. So for instance, if I use you as an example, you have a podcast, you meet with your clients, you're coaching your team, you built a great business. And oh, by the way, you have this wonderful daughter and you have all these other people that rely on you in your personal life. And similarly for me, I think, just making sure that my son and my husband get the best parts of me, that my family and my friends are a priority. And then, of course, work is a conduit for me to be able to have a really robust life. But the priorities there are really important.
I think that's a really important point too, as women, a lot of times we lose balance, or I know that I have a hard time with finding the balance. And I think that there are times when your career takes a priority spot and you have to put a little bit of extra effort into it, but don't let those outweigh, significantly the times when you're putting the people and the things that are most important to you, your spouse, your kids, your significant others, those things, that are truly going to last forever. You don't want to forget those.
Yeah, absolutely. I had a coach once tell me that as long as something is within the top 3 priorities, it's still a priority. And sometimes, like you're saying, sometimes those 3 will shift. So sometimes your family is your top priority, and then job, and then whatever, right? Friends. And then other times it's like your job takes center stage and then your family and friends or whatever it is. But as long as your energy is focused on those top 3 and something is in those top 3, then they're getting the best of you. It's when they fall out from those top 3 that you've got to really be conscious.
Yeah, that's a really nice way of looking at it. I'm going to use that because I thought if it wasn't at the top spot, then I was failing.
Yeah, let's give ourselves some permission, Lorie.
I'm so glad I talked to you today. I feel so much better after this. So, what, if you could look back, Wassan, on when you started, what scared you the most? And does it still scare you?
Oh, that's a great thing to think about. What scared me the most? I, probably uncertainty. Just if I had to put it in a nutshell, and not really knowing what the future holds for me. I think that was the beginning. I was a corporate finance major at USC. On paper, I shouldn't have been scared, but I was the first in my family to enter this industry. And so I didn't have an understanding of what it could potentially mean for me. And so I think uncertainty was a big thing for me. Now, I don't think that was sort of like this overwhelming ambiguity about the future, right? Not knowing what the career holds, if it'll be successful, how will I navigate it, who will I meet, like all of those things. Now, I don't think I'm scared about the same thing. I have more perspective. My life is different. My career obviously is much more established. I spend my time coaching people. And so that, as much as they learn from me, I really learn from them as well, a lot. And so I don't have as much uncertainty about my future. I see clearly where I want to end up. I see clearly what I want my future to look like. I see clearly the balance that I have. I think the number one thing I'm afraid of now is whether or not I'll be able to achieve that,
Yeah.
achieving my goals.
Yeah.
Whether it's career, financial, family, life, all of it. I see it very clearly, but now I need to make sure I achieve it. And that's probably the hardest thing now.
But not as much as at the beginning. It was more of the unknown, and there were so many possibilities. And you also hadn't practiced any of them yet. You hadn't made the decisions or tried the hard things yet.
Totally. Zero muscle memory. Now at least I have some agility, which is good.
So, did you face any unique challenges because you were a woman? Did you run into anything where you're like, ooh, I know we have, I've talked to different people, and one of them was a pilot, and she was, she had a hard time. You can't breastfeed a kid in the cockpit. So she was having a hard time because she was a woman.
Yeah. Oh man, you just took me back. Yeah, I remember having to pump in the airport bathrooms. And then I don't know if you breastfed or not, but I just remember being so sad that I had to throw it away because it was, how people joke around liquid gold. And I was like, oh my gosh, here I am in the airport bathroom. This is so unsanitary. Lumping, and I have to throw it away. It was so not ideal. And that was, I was traveling for work with that. I think I'll always say that I've been lucky in my career. And of course, you kind of make your own luck. And I should acknowledge that. But there are parts where I truly have been lucky. Of course, like every woman along your career, you might not have been taken as seriously at some point, especially maybe when I was younger. But I've had the advantage of having at least two really amazing managers in my life. And I currently have two incredible mentors. And because of these four people who all happen to be men, I've actually been very lucky because I can go to them very openly, talk to them. They're complete allies of mine. They guided me. They gave me advice. They were always protecting me. So I had their air cover. And that was a really important thing for me. It always has been. But, it just, of course, as a woman, like I remember one time I was on stage talking about futures trading and downside risk exposure and, upside capture and all sorts of different, very analytical concepts. And I came off the stage and somebody told me that the people in the back were commenting that I resembled a famous person. And I was like, what? Like what? I've been talking about really deep analytical concepts, just complicated scenarios and trading platforms. And that's what
That's
people,
what they took away.
yeah, I was just so bummed out, but I thought, whatever. It is what it is.
I think it's a good point that you brought up, though, that a lot of times we need men to help mentor, because they're, especially in a male-dominated industry like finance, they're already in the spots. You need a mentor to help you kind of grow and progress in your career. And I have found nothing but supportive and helpful people along the way as well. So I think that's a plus, but you do need them. You need them.
You really do. I remember, so my most recent manager, he retired last year, and he's like a second father to me. And he always says the same thing about me. I'm like his third daughter. And that relationship is so valuable to me. I mean, we still talk every couple of weeks, even though he's been retired for over 6 months, and really important person in my life. And I agree with you. I think, having that allyship is really important.
So, Wassan, what is the thing that you are the most proud of?
When it comes to life, probably my marriage and my son. Those are the two relationships that I'm most proud of. Also, the life that we've cultivated, very lucky. And so I'm really proud to be able to look at that and say, man, we've done so much in these last 42 years. Like, I don't know what the rest holds for us, but right now it's pretty good. In my career, what I'm most proud of is, I think, the moments when I'm working with people and you just sort of see things progress. You see them blossoming in the way that they need to blossom. You see people maybe feeling courageous enough to pursue things that maybe they thought they wouldn't pursue. All of those things, I think I'm most proud of, to have been by their side, just to have been a fly on the wall as that sort of took place. And because of my role, I've been the beneficiary of being able to see that time and time again throughout every year. And so that's been a really great, fulfilling moment for me.
I find that I'm a little bit the same, where I look back and see how other people are progressing because of something that I've helped with or done. That brings a lot of satisfaction. I completely see where you're coming from there.
Yeah. I mean, well, you help people achieve financial goals. I mean, just talk about impact. That's awesome.
So if you could talk to a young lady who's just starting down a path that you're already well in the middle of, what would you say to her to help her be successful like you?
I would say a few things. First, go. Just go, right? Like, hit the green button, go in a drive. I mean, just go. Second is, there are obstacles along the way. There are roles that on paper seem like, oh my gosh, how would I ever be able to do this if I had a husband or a child, And so you might make a decision that keeps you from taking a certain role because you think that you might not be able to balance your life. My genuine reaction to that is, take that role, because you will have balance. There are people prior to you who have had those roles and have balance. Me being one of them, right? So I traveled all the time, and literally every week I would travel. And then when my son came along, I had the advantage of working, more remotely. And so there's always things that can shift around. You never know, especially if you're really good at your job, you're going to find a way to make life and work balance out really good. So never stop yourself from taking an opportunity because you're scared of what your schedule might look like or what the impact might be, or if it'll allow you to have the life that you envisioned, because you will have the life that you had envisioned. The third thing I would say is mentor. I think that's like a running theme for me, is find yourself a leader or a mentor, somebody else in the industry, whatever industry you decide to go into, who is a servant leader, who is somebody who would help block and tackle obstacles for you so that you can do what you do best. And they're out there. They might be a little bit harder to find, but they're absolutely out there. And if you catch them at the right time, they're going to do anything to want to help you. And they will. They really will.
Yeah.
So I think those are the three things that I would probably say.
Yeah. Well, with the idea of looking back and saying that some of our greatest triumphs come from helping others grow, that lends itself to finding mentors in this space and having people that really truly do want to just see you do better and grow in that space. So,
yeah, totally.
Wassan, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. Do you have, if we have ladies listening to this that want to get in touch with you or want to learn more about you, where do they go?
Oh, yeah. Well, gosh, probably my LinkedIn. How about that? Is that okay? We'll do LinkedIn. So I have LinkedIn, Wassan Kasey, Wassan Kaasey. I think I'm the only one. So connect with me. Would love to hear from you.
Well, that's just great. Thank you so much again for your time today. I really appreciate you spending this time with us.
Oh, thank you, Lorie. This is fantastic. Thanks so much for having me on.